We put more bombs on target than the F-4s and the F-105s combined, and we did it at 350 knots. Commander John Nichols, A-7 pilot, USS Ranger, 1972. The A-7 Corsair II should have been a footnote, subsonic in an era that worshipped Mach 2. Stubby, fat, derived from a fighter the Navy already considered past its prime. Pentagon critics called it a step backward. Vought engineers called it the future of precision strike. The engineers were right. The A-7 carried an integrated digital weapons delivery system, the AN/ASN-91, when most tactical jets still relied on a pilot's eyeball and a grease pencil mark on the canopy. That computer fed continuously updated wind corrections, dive angle, airspeed, and release point calculations into a head-up display that let a pilot pickle bombs with a circular error, probable under 30 feet. 30 feet. The F-4 Phantom, flying twice as fast, averaged closer to 400. The F-105 Thunderchief, the workhorse of Rolling Thunder, ran similar numbers. Both aircraft carried heavier bomb loads. Both flew faster, looked meaner, cost more per sortie. Neither could hit what the A-7 hit. If you ever flew the Corsair II, or pulled ordnance for one on a flight deck at dark 30, drop your squadron in the comments. Hit like and subscribe. These airframes deserve more than a paragraph in someone else's history. The accuracy gap was embarrassing. According to a 1973 Naval Weapons Center analysis, A-7 squadrons in Vietnam delivered ordnance with roughly 4 times the precision of faster tactical aircraft operating in the same theater, against the same targets, in comparable weather. 4 times. And the A-7 did it while absorbing AAA and SA-2 launches, at an airspeed where most jet pilots would have felt naked. 350 knots over the Red River Valley, no afterburner, no escape in raw speed. Just the computer, the HUD, and a pilot who trusted both enough to hold the dive a half-second longer than instinct allowed. What do you get when you take the hottest carrier fighter of the 1950s and rip out everything that made it fast? Ling-Temco-Vought knew exactly what they were getting. The F-8 Crusader, the last of the gunfighters, had earned its reputation in dogfights over the South China Sea, killing MiGs with 20mm cannon at ranges where pilots could see the rivets on the other airplane. Mach 1.8, variable incidence wing, a gorgeous, violent machine. LTV's chief engineer John Conrad looked at that airframe in 1963 and saw something nobody else did: a bomb truck. The Navy's VAL requirement called for a single-seat, single-engine light attack aircraft that could replace the aging A-4 Skyhawk and the propeller-driven A-1 Skyraider. Cheap, simple, and lots of them. The specification explicitly demanded subsonic performance, Mach 0.9 at sea level, because the Navy had learned a brutal arithmetic in the skies over North Vietnam. Speed cost fuel, fuel cost range, range cost lives. A pilot who couldn't loiter over a target long enough to find and kill it on the first pass had to come back for a second. The defenses knew he was coming the second time. Conrad's team shortened the Crusader's fuselage by 3 feet, widened it, deleted the variable incidence wing mechanism, and replaced the afterburning J-57 with a non-afterburning Pratt and Whitney TF-30 turbofan. The intake moved from a shark-mouthed chin scoop to a blunt round opening that looked, frankly, like a garbage disposal. Pilots who transferred from the Crusader winced. The airframe had gained 2,000 pounds and lost 400 knots. The skin panels rattled in turbulence at low altitude. The cockpit smelled like hydraulic fluid and hot avionics, that particular ozone and grease scent that every A-7 pilot remembers before anything else. We designed it to fly low and slow, and put iron on a 50-foot target in weather that grounded everything else on the carrier. Conrad told Aviation Week in 1967. What they added mattered more than what they removed. That AN/ASN-91 computer weighed just under 40 pounds. It talked to a Doppler navigation radar, an air data computer, a projected map display, and the head-up display, all integrated, all feeding the pilot a continuously computed impact point that moved across his windscreen like a living thing. No other tactical aircraft in any nation's inventory carried anything close in 1966. The Soviets wouldn't field a comparable system for another 15 years. The first A-7 Alpha rolled out of LTV's Dallas plant on September 26, 1965. It cost $1.7 million per airframe. An F-4 Phantom ran $2.4 million. The Corsair II delivered 4 times the accuracy at 70% of the price. The A-7 is a solution looking for a problem. General Walter Sweeney, commander of Tactical Air Command, reportedly told the Joint Chiefs in 1964, Sweeney wanted the F-111, variable geometry wings, Mach 2.5, nuclear capability, a machine that matched the Air Force's self-image. The idea of buying a subsonic, single-engine Navy attack plane built from a 50s fighter airframe offended him on what appeared to be a cellular level. He had allies. Admiral Tom Connolly, the man who would later kill the Navy's F-111B variant with a single sentence before Congress, argued in '64 that the A-7 duplicated the A-4 Skyhawk's mission at higher cost. The A-4 worked. The A-4 had combat time. Why spend money on a fatter, heavier version of an airplane that already existed? Connolly's logic held a flaw he couldn't see from 1964. The A-4's bombing accuracy depended entirely on pilot skill, and pilot skill varied by a factor of 10 between a nugget and a veteran. The A-7's computer closed that gap to a factor of 2. A brand new lieutenant in an A-7 put more bombs on target than a seasoned A-4 pilot on his third cruise. The records from VA-147's first combat deployment in 1967 confirmed it. Nobody at the Pentagon in '64 had those numbers yet. They had opinions. Robert McNamara's Office of Systems Analysis ran a cost-effectiveness study in late 1963 that recommended canceling the VAL program outright. Their models showed the A-4, with upgraded avionics, could perform the light attack mission through 1975 at 60% of the A-7's projected program cost. The study assumed a CEP of 200 feet for both aircraft. The A-7's actual CEP turned out to be under 30. The model's core assumption missed reality by a factor of almost 7. Nobody went back and corrected it. That study circulated through the E-ring for 11 months. It nearly worked. In February 1965, 1 month before the Marines landed at Da Nang, the Deputy Secretary of Defense recommended deferring A-7 procurement, pending further evaluation of A-4 modernization options. The recommendation sat on McNamara's desk for 3 weeks. The after-action report from the first Rolling Thunder strikes changed the conversation. Bomb damage assessments from Route Package 1 showed abysmal accuracy rates across every tactical platform in the inventory. Bridges standing after 40 sorties. Rail yards cratered but operational within 72 hours. $15 million in ordnance expended against the Than Hoa Bridge between April and September of '65. The bridge stood. The accuracy problem announced itself in blood and steel, and suddenly, a subsonic jet with a 40-pound computer didn't look so redundant. McNamara approved full-rate production in November 1965. 399 A-7 Alphas for the Navy. The Air Force held out another 18 months before admitting they needed it too. Their version, the A-7 Delta, carried a more powerful TF-41 Allison turbofan and an even more refined weapons computer. General Sweeney had retired by then. TAC's new leadership quietly dropped the objections and ordered 459 airframes. The procurement file from '63 through '67 reads like a case study in institutional resistance to evidence. The word adequate appears 14 times in reference to the A-4. The word superior appears 0 times in reference to anything. December 4, 1967. VA-147 launched 6 A-7 Alphas off USS Ranger into Route Package 2. First combat sorties for the Corsair II. First combat sorties for the AN/ASN-91. The target was a vehicle staging area south of Vinh, ringed by 37mm guns and at least 2 radar-directed 57mm sights. Lieutenant Commander Arnold Shade led the flight down from 12,000 feet in a 30-degree dive. the HUD's computed impact point drifting across the green glow of his windscreen until it settled on the truck park's north entrance. He pickled at 4,000 feet. The G-suit squeezed his legs and abdomen as he pulled 5 Gs through the recovery, the airframe groaning through the turn, flak bursting in dirty orange puffs close enough to smell the cordite through the bleed air system. His bombs hit 17 feet from the aim point. 17 feet. On his first combat pass in an aircraft, the Pentagon had tried to cancel 3 years earlier. The post-strike photography showed 6 craters clustered inside a 50-foot circle. An F-105 strike against the same target complex 2 weeks prior had scattered 24 bombs across a 300-foot area, killing rice paddies and water buffalo. The BDA comparison circulated through 7th Fleet staff within 48 hours. VA-147 flew 83 sorties that first month. 81 scored direct hits or near misses by the standards of the day. The loss rate, 0. The Than Hoa Bridge still stood. It had absorbed hundreds of sorties from F-105s and F-4s across 2 years of rolling thunder. President Johnson halted strikes north of the 20th parallel in March 1968 before A-7s got a crack at it. The bridge survived until 1972, when laser-guided bombs finally dropped its western span. The A-7 carried those paveways too, VA-82 off USS America, but the kill belonged to the guidance kit, not the airframe. What belonged to the airframe was everything that happened at 350 knots without a laser. Iron bombs, dumb gravity, and a 40-pound computer doing what no pilot's eye could do alone. Commander Lyle Bull rolled his A-7 Echo into a 40-degree dive over the Alpha Peninsula at 02:15 on January 17, 1991, the infrared glow of burning oil facilities filling the lower half of his canopy. The SLUF, short little ugly fella, or something close to that, had come to its last war 23 years after its first. The airframe under Bull smelled the same as every A-7 that ever flew. Hydraulic fluid, ozone, sweat-soaked harness webbing baked into the ejection seat by 1,000 traps. VA-72 and VA-46 launched from USS John F. Kennedy that first night. The youngest A-7 Echo in the air wing had rolled off the Dallas line in 1976. The oldest dated to 1969. These were tired machines held together by maintenance crews who averaged 19.3 man-hours per flight hour, nearly double the F/A-18's rate. The plane captains knew every stress crack by its first name. They carried AGM-62 Walleye glide bombs and GBU-12 Paveway 2s, the same laser-guided weapons the younger Hornets hauled. The difference showed up in the cost ledger, not the bomb damage assessment. An A-7 sortie ran roughly $4,200 in fuel and maintenance. An F/A-18 sortie cost just over $7,000. The bombs hit the same targets with the same precision. Kennedy's Air Wing commander, Captain Bernard Smith, noted in his after-action summary that A-7 crews achieved target destruction rates equivalent to or exceeding squadron averages across all strike platforms. The report uses the word exceeding. From an aircraft scheduled for retirement before the invasion of Kuwait, 48 combat sorties in the first 72 hours, bridges, command bunkers, SAM sites, ammunition storage complexes south of Basra. Lieutenant Commander David Clement put a walleye through a ventilation shaft on a hardened communications facility on the third night. A target 2 F/A-18 strikes had damaged but failed to destroy. The shaft measured roughly 4 feet across. Clement released at 8 miles. The walleye's television seeker locked on a contrast point his weapons system operator had designated through the FLIR. The weapon flew for 91 seconds. He never saw the impact. The battle damage assessment photographs confirmed penetration the following morning. By February 1st, the A-7s had flown 153 combat sorties with 0 losses, not a single aircraft down. The SA-6 batteries and Roland systems across southern Iraq threw everything they had at the slow, low attackers, pushing through at 400 knots. The A-7's ALQ-126 jammer and ALE-39 chaff dispensers, systems designed in the 1970s, held. Skill helped. These pilots had spent their careers below the hard deck, where speed couldn't save them. They knew how to jink in the dark at 300 feet, the desert floor a black void under the belly, turbulence from thermal inversions slamming the stick hard enough to bruise palms through Nomex gloves. On March 1, 1991, VA-72 flew the last combat sortie in A-7 history. The squadron stood down 6 weeks later. The Navy decommissioned every remaining Corsair II unit by May. The retirement paperwork had been signed before the first bomb fell. The AN/ASN-91 weapons computer weighed 39.6 pounds. It sat behind the pilot's ejection seat in a pressurized bay, roughly the size of a bread box, humming at a frequency most crews described as a low dental drill, constant, ignorable, maddening if you thought about it. What it did to strike aviation took years to fully register. Every strike aircraft in the current American inventory, the F/A-18, the F-15 Echo, the F-35, runs a direct descendant of the navigation and weapons delivery architecture ling-temco-vought's engineers wired into the A-7 in 1965, the integrated HUD bombing solution, continuous computation of release point, the Doppler inertial navigation, feeding real-time wind corrections into the ballistic equation. Before the A-7, these functions existed as separate analog systems that didn't talk to each other. After it, they fused into a single digital loop. IBM built the ASN-91. Their internal project documentation, declassified in 1998 under FOIA case number F-19-98-0-4-7-7-3, calls the architecture a weapon-agnostic delivery platform capable of first-pass accuracy, independent of pilot proficiency level. Weapon-agnostic, first-pass, independent of pilot proficiency. The pilot's skill ceiling no longer dictated whether the bomb hit. In 1965, those three phrases described science fiction. By 1967, they described Tuesday over North Vietnam. The Air Force's A-7 Delta took it further. Texas Instruments replaced the IBM unit with their own ASN-91 upgrade, cutting the bombing circular error probable to under 20 feet in ideal conditions. That TI architecture migrated almost unchanged into the F-16's fire control computer in 1974. General Dynamics hired 6 of the same engineers. The sensor fusion concept, merging radar, inertial navigation, and weapons release into one targeting solution, moved from the SLUF to the Viper without anyone holding a ceremony. Total A-7 production across all variants, 1,569 airframes. Total combat losses in Vietnam, 6. Total combat losses in Desert Storm, 0. Total cost per airframe in $1966, approximately $1.2 million. Adjusted for inflation, roughly $9.8 million in 1991 terms, less than one-third the cost of the F/A-18 Hornet that replaced it. The final Navy A-7 flew to the boneyard at Davis-Monthan on May 27, 1991. The aircraft's logbook recorded 4,612 flight hours, 11 deployments, 2 combat theaters. The acceptance form at the Aerospace Maintenance and Regeneration Center listed the airframe's disposition as Type 1000 storage, intact, no planned reactivation. File number AMARC-A-7-E-7-2-0-9-1. The duty officer at Davis-Monthan signed the form, walked back to the operations building, and ate lunch.